All right, man. Bill Belichick potentially out in New England. That's the, again, subtle report from our friend Tom Curran, NBC Sports Boston, that the decision was made after the Germany game. Bill Belichick out in New England. Do you believe this? And is this the right move for the Patriots?
Yeah, I believe it. I think it's been sounding inevitable for a while. That was another college game day thing, right? Robert Kraft was there, and McAfee, or was that? Yeah, it was
that was the same
day,
thing.
Right?
Pat McAfee.
Right, McAfee was kind of like, everyone knows where it's going. We don't envy your situation, your decision, essentially. Basically saying everyone knows it's happening. Belichick's gone. We don't need to make you say it right now, but yada yada. So it does seem like it's going that way, and it makes sense in terms of if it was any other coach, it would be obvious, right? Like, this thing has been a disaster. The Patriots are terrible. They're setting like records for futility on offense. It's all been bad since Brady left. Getting worse. We go in a different direction, but only because it's Bill Belichick, i.e., the most successful coach of all time. Does it make you pause and go, well, like, how much credit in the bank should a guy like that have at this point? Like, how much should he deserve the chance to put this thing back on his feet? And from an ownership point of view, how much of an opportunity should you give a guy like that to actually fix it? Like, when does it become apparent that he's not going to put it back together and actually we do need to go in a different direction? Because ultimately, every single coaching legend in NFL history has reached a point where they didn't put it back together again and we had to go in a different direction.
Yeah, a couple things here.
Except the ones that retired, I guess. But like
some of them just
the
retired.
ones that clung on long enough, right?
Like Don Shula in 1995, it didn't matter that he's Don Shula, right?
Yeah, and Mike Shanahan, right? Super Bowl winning head coach, like legend of the team, reached a point, and they weren't even bad. It's just like we're not good anymore, right? We're adequate. We're mediocre for long enough that we're going in a different direction. Sorry, Mike. It happens.
The tricky part, so I think when you're trying to predict this thing, to me, it's not all that surprising that they would move on from him because, again, Robert Kraft has said over the last couple of years, like, I want to win. Right? And I think he knows how to separate business from previous success and say, okay, it's just time to move on. And, they haven't had Tom Brady since 2019 now. So they had basically one playoff appearance was 2021. And so that was 2 years removed from Brady. It was like, all right, we just drafted a rookie quarterback in the first round, trending in the right direction, and then things got worse in 2022, and then things hit rock bottom in 2023. And so they were a team that looked like, hey, they're a 7 or 8 win team coming into the season, and they've been even worse than that. Even if they salvage this year and win a couple more games, it's a bad season. It's interesting to me though, if they had won 7 games, I feel like it's obvious that you move on from Belichick. They're just mediocre. Do you think the fact that the Patriots could actually have one of the top 2 picks in the draft now, or say pick 2, and have a quarterback, do you think it's actually more likely that Belichick could stick around and be part of the rebuild? Is that weird backwards thinking that they were so bad this year that it's actually more likely that Belichick is around to be part of the QB selection and building this thing back up again?
No, I think it probably doesn't make much difference either way. But I think, if anything, the fact that when you struggle, you have this problem of the clean answer to going in a different direction. The clean answer is picking 1 or 2 and having a shot at the next obvious franchise quarterback, even if, that guy doesn't end up being a franchise quarterback. Just the fact that it's an idiot-proof decision at that stage it makes it easy to just go in a different direction because you're like, I don't need, the veteran experience of a guy that's been here 15 years to transition in this direction. Anybody knows the pathway we're on now, which is we draft the next QB and he's the guy. So I think when you're picking in that sort of spot, it takes care of itself. So from a Robert Kraft perspective, it's like the decision's being made, right? We're picking this high, we're drafting a new quarterback, and we just have to hope that works out. I don't need Bill Belichick to do that. And I no longer have the confidence that he's able to, assemble everything else around this guy to make it optimal for his success either.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see points about like Bill Belichick can still coach. right? Bill Belichick's
Sure.
still a good coach. I see those takes, and I'm like, yeah, I could see it. I mean, that again, the defense has had a lot of injuries this year, like others have. But it looks like they may have hit on a star in Christian Gonzalez at cornerback. They haven't seen him since week 3 or 4, and they're still competitive defensively. I think he's still a good defensive coach. The problem is he's the GM. He's tied to being the general manager as well.
Right.
He's shopping for the groceries. He's putting this whole thing together. But the argument against that would be like, all right, so maybe let's say they missed on Mac Jones, the quarterback. The same argument I used about, does Bill Belichick deserve credit for finding and developing Tom Brady? Like, yeah, he does. That's his job, is to find and develop good players, and he happened to find the best of all time, and he deserves credit for that. And then when you get into like this credit pie, like obviously Belichick's not going to be as successful without Tom Brady, but he was involved in the decision to help Tom Brady have an opportunity to play. But just because he made maybe the most important decision in NFL history in 2001 doesn't mean the next time he chooses a quarterback, he's going to hit it out of the park again. So let's say he picks Mac Jones and he missed. And you could argue about that either way, because Mac Jones had a good season. He was the 5th quarterback drafted that year. They picked at 15. So did he really have the choice of the quarterbacks? Not really.
Right.
But let's say they missed on Mac Jones. So just because Belichick and the Patriots missed on the last quarterback, same reasoning, right? Doesn't mean they're going to miss on the next one. There's a chance now they might get served up Caleb Williams or Drake May, which theoretically you got something to work with there, and it's harder to miss. So does Belichick's past success with Brady and his past miss with Mac Jones, I don't think matters in this point. There could be an argument that like, hey, we're going to give you the quarterback, we're going to give you Drake May, and you're still a good defensive coach, and these are the ingredients that are going to lead to success. So again, I feel like the Patriots were so bad this year. It's also that makes it almost more likely that Belichick could be part of the rebuild because he could be handed a quarterback at this point.
It all comes down to the Tom Brady dynamic, right? Like the problem I think Belichick is facing right now is you sort of look back at his legacy and it's like, well, theoretically he's the right guy, right? He's the greatest coach of all time. Why would you not want him stewarding the next, iteration of this whole team? But the problem is Kraft and everybody else is now staring at this and saying, Brady won immediately post Belichick. Belichick hasn't won outside of Brady at all in either direction. How much of this was him anyway? Like the whole narrative, right? We start literally immediately he left. You're like, this is what's going to happen. The narrative, Brady's going to win, Belichick isn't, and now we're going to reassess everything. None of the credit goes to Belichick. And even now it's like the Patriot way. Was it really just Tom Brady being there and stitching everything together? And that doesn't happen anymore. So that's not what. So now everybody's looking at Belichick and going, well, is he actually the greatest? Is he the guy? Is he the greatest coach of all time? Does any of it matter without Brady in the building? Like, you know what I mean? It's taking away all the credit that he's built up in the bank.
The without stats are pretty damning. Again, Belichick was 5-11 his first year with New England, 0-2 before Tom Brady took over in 2001. There were old articles that were resurfaced recently where New England is like last in power rankings. They were last in playmakers and running back and receiver rankings and all these different things. And then Brady took over and they won the Super Bowl that very year. And even though they did end up having a good defense, but they weren't. It wasn't like they were trending in the right direction. So the without Brady stuff absolutely is probably the final nail, right? It is, you've had 20, 21, 22, and 23 to build a roster. That's enough time to build a roster. To build a roster post Tom Brady, and it hasn't even remained, status quo. It's gotten far worse.
There's also this whole dynamic. Remember, there was that giant book tomb of like an expose, the Belichick, Kraft, Brady relationship had soured, it had gone bad. They're already, I think, in a situation where there is some kind of tension between Belichick and Kraft that wasn't there when they were winning the Super Bowl every other year. You know what I mean? So if things were great between them, I'm sure Kraft would potentially be predisposed to look favorably on Belichick's resume and say, no, he's the guy, right? I know things have been bad recently, but I have full faith in Bill turning this around eventually. But because there isn't, there's some sort of tension lingering there, there's some kind of stuff in the background that's already soured this. Now he's looking at it and going, this is just Brady the whole time. I don't have Brady anymore, so I need a new coach.
Yeah. And again, as Tom Curran reported, they were never going to fire him mid-season.
Right.
He's also a tradable asset.
I was going to say, they can trade him away. Like, even if they've decided to move on from him, they're not just firing him.
It'll be interesting, because we have a David Tepper in Carolina.
Yep.
Who is a little hands-on as an owner. Probably wants to make a big splash. I mean, he's probably going to be interested. I mean, there's Washington, new ownership, perhaps the end of Ron Rivera there. There are teams that are, going to be interested, I think, in bringing Bill Belichick in. So it's going to be, again, we'll talk more about it when it comes up. But it was an unofficial report, basically, that Belichick's already out in New England. It could be his last month here in New England, hired back in 2000. After he told the Jets he was not going to take the job on a napkin. Was that on a napkin that he wrote it? Not going to be the coach or whatever he wrote?
Yeah. Or a Post-it note or something.
I forgot about that. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
It's pretty funny. It's also like, I mean, think of the crap Josh McDaniels took for bailing on the Colts.
It's all in line.
Yeah. Well, it's all in line, but it's also like, it's worse. That's way worse than McDaniels thing.
If he didn't have so much success, and he just lasted a couple years in New England, you'd be like, what an idiot. Like, what a jerk.
Well, not just exactly. Yeah. Not just what an idiot, but like what an asshole.
Yeah. He's hasn't changed, He's same answers with the media and the whole thing. So bottom line is, I believe it's what are the complaints about our Justin Fields takes?
I'm trying to determine that.
Am I too positive?
No,
not positive enough.
I think it might just be that we're talking about it.
Oh, we shouldn't talk about Fields.
Do you think that Belichick actually wants to go somewhere else and do it all over again? Like, so we've hit this weird world where you're like, this guy is an absolute tool to everybody in the media, right? Like, we're on to Cincinnati. I'm not talking to you. I'm not engaging you. I'm just like, he's an asshole half the time to the media, right? And yet he goes and does game day and everybody loves it and he's great and he's engaging. He got an Emmy for that thing he did with Chris, the 100 best players or whatever. Like, does he actually look at this and go, now's the time to just go to TV?
I don't think, I've said this for years, I'm pretty consistent with it. I don't think the way he answers questions in the media is just to be a jerk. It's just to be that way. I literally think, because he's a football coach and only cares about winning football games, when somebody asks him about last week's game or whatever it might be, his mind just doesn't operate that way. I think his mind just operates like, I need to do everything I can to win the next game, the thing that's in front of me. That he's so process-oriented. Like, that's honestly been my take on it the whole time. The on to Cincinnati thing was literally just him being like, hey, we just lost. We have to go beat the Bengals now. It's my job to go beat the Bengals. I need to just go execute my job. Then when he gets on TV, his job is to talk about football and, do TV stuff. And that's why he's different. I really think that's what it is. I don't think he's trying to, if he's trying to withhold information to the media, it's because he thinks it's best for winning, whether it's right or wrong. Other people have done it in different ways and still won plenty of games, right? So I'm not saying he's taking the right approach. But I don't think he's being like, I really gotta needle the media here. I think he's just so focused on the next thing and what he can control, which is what you, as a coach, you teach to your players and you teach your employees or whatever it might be, right? So that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's trying to be a dick. I think he just is a dick to the media when he doesn't want to talk about that stuff.
Possibly, but when you put him into situations like the media knows, like, hey, ask him about long snappers on Fridays, and then he goes off on history of long snappers back to the 40s, right? But that's my point. Like, he might be going to TV. Who knows?
He has just zero interest in playing the game when he doesn't want to. It's not that like I have to think about Cincinnati and nothing else. It's just that like I don't want to talk about what you want to talk about, and I'm not willing to entertain you with a bullshit answer just because this is a press conference and this is what everybody else does. It's just like, no, I'm out on this. Unlucky.
I feel like so did you hear Al Michaels, what he theorized? He just like made up on the spot.
I did, but I don't remember what it was.
He basically said, Belichick could get fired, or he could go somewhere else, or he could get traded, or he could. What if he started doing TV with Tom Brady on Fox?
That was it, yeah.
Right, and it was like, no, and Al's got like some prop bet hidden somewhere that like Belichick and Brady are going to work together in Fox. That was fascinating because I think I don't know that Brady's going to be good on TV.
Yeah,
like when Bill Walsh was on TV. because I watch old games, you hear Bill Walsh on TV sometimes covering games. A lot of Bill Walsh's analysis is that like frustrated great coach is like, man, they're not doing it my way.
Right.
I feel like Brady would probably lean into that too much. Like, oh man, this guy's just not reading the field like he should. Right. But I think because Belichick's a good, I know Walsh was a coach, but Belichick's a coach and a teacher. I feel like he would bring a little bit more. He might bring more to a broadcast than like a Brady. But that theory of Brady and Belichick on the same broadcast with a host, that'd be hilarious.
I mean, I just wonder at this point in his career if he wants to go and just because he's under contract somewhere and they can trade him, does he actually want that, or would he just take a TV gig and be around the game that way?
Yeah, you're right. Like his mentor Bill Parcells he always had the itch to start something new and start from scratch. Like he went to Dallas and then he went to the Jets, and then
it's actually amazing that he did legit just retire at the end of it all. Now and still potters around and does just being Bill Parcells, but like he felt like the kind of guy that would keep going until he was medically incapable.
Did he? He was in Miami for a little bit too, right? In the front office.
Yeah.
So he just bounced around with with the GM role, right, with a team building role, and he loved starting things from scratch. Belichick hasn't started something from scratch in 24 years, right? So you don't like that might not be what he wants to do in his 70s. We made the same comment about Pete Carroll a couple years ago. Does he actually want to do a rebuild? And it turns out they accelerated that pretty quickly, and good for Carroll.